Well, good evening and welcome to Space Oddities. Thank you so much for joining us on this Tuesday evening. Hope everybody had a fantastic Easter. Hope your weather was kind to you. It was here. It was lovely weather, as you might expect. But anyway, we are now on the third live stream of our special Moon Month this month. And I hope you've been watching the videos that we've been posting on the channel for Moon Month. Plenty more yet to come. Haven't posted any the last couple of days because I've had no internet for the last 2 days. Luckily, the engineer came out this afternoon and fixed it. And I wasn't sure why. The internet just failed. And in the end, it turned out to be the fact that my brother-in-law had put a strimmer through the fibre optic cable in the garden. So that was the reason. However, it's all fixed now. And of course, he will be paying for that. So we're back. This unfortunately means I haven't had an opportunity to do anything on the internet the last couple of days. So there's a really short news section today and a really short Einstein of the week, and only what I've managed to put together in the last couple of hours. So apologies for that, but normal service will be resumed next week. So we are a bit thin on the ground, as you can see tonight. I'm joined this evening by Roger in deepest Sparkford, and yes. Daz, who's not in deepest Sparkford. Otherwise, people might start spreading stories. So, yes. So there we are. So, welcome, gentlemen. How are you?
Lovely, thank
you.
Very
good. Yep.
Yep. Roger, he didn't get any Easter eggs. So
no.
Daz, did you get any?
Yes, I did actually.
Oh.
No.
And
and
it was I had a little spaceman as well, with a plushy spaceman.
Oh, so, nice. Yeah. Absolutely.
It's only because my partner's away and I need something to cuddle.
Oh. Right.
Oh, right.
And we're also joined this evening by Lou, who is trying to connect. I gather he's somewhere. Where did you say he was, Daz?
Did he say Richmond, Vancouver, or something like that?
Virginia. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes. You can see your heartbeat as well.
just trying to get the camera to enable, as they say.
Right.
Yeah.
Try that.
Are you on a? Did Daz tell me you're on a 3G connection, Lou?
I would be, except that I'm at the hotel, so they have a little better. 3G would be with my phone, and
right.
This is the hotel, which is got to be better than that. But I can't get the camera on, so I will continue to work.
Okay. Okay. Well, let's hope you manage to get your camera working.
Nice to see you anyway.
Nice to see you.
As I said, we will be posting more videos for the rest of Moon Month. Next week, we have got the Moon quiz that Michael will be doing for us. Michael's otherwise engaged this evening, so he couldn't make it. But I hope you can join us for the Moon quiz next week, when you can pit your wits against us and the other viewers with your knowledge or not of the moon. So we look forward to that. Tonight, we are going to be discussing the whole business of moon landing deniers, those individuals who claim that the Apollo moon landings never happened. So we're going to be taking a look at that. We'd really love to hear your comments about it. So any comments you have, please put them in the chat. And speaking of which, I'm just going to have a quick look at the chat and see who we've got joining us this evening. Oh, goodness me. Right. So we have Jerry. Hi, Jerry. Hope you're well. We've got Ian. Hi, Ian. Heidi's there. How are you, Heidi? Paul's there. And Andy Cowley's here. Hi, Andy. Hope you're well. And Paul Bogart's here, and so on. So thank you so much for being here. And as I said, we hope you all had a wonderful Easter, and you're raring to go again, looking towards the summer break, which I certainly am. I shall be actually spending some time in London in June. Since my daughter was born, I've had a plan to take her to London one day and show her around the museums and the sites and whatever. And I wanted to wait till she was old enough to remember it in later life. Well, she's now 14. And I thought now was about time we did it. So we'll be in London for 5 days during June. And if anybody's about in London, let me know. It's from the 18th to the 23rd of June. So anybody want to meet up in London, let me know. Simple as that. So don't forget, we'll do the usual stuff, as always. If you would like to support Space Oddities, you can do so by, first of all, buying us a coffee. And as it says, we, astronomers' lives matter too. And we would appreciate any support from you in terms of buying us a coffee, because all the money goes towards keeping Space Oddities running. So every little bit helps, no matter how small or indeed how enormous. So you can scan the QR code there, or you can click the link that's just appeared in the chat. Don't forget, we have the Space Oddities shop. Summer's coming up. You need to look funky and sexy in your Space Oddities t-shirts. And you can buy those as well as the Space Oddities hoodies at the shop. And the t-shirts are £25, which does include UK postage and packing. And the hoodies start at £35, again, including UK postage and packing. And if you're ordering from abroad, please add £10 to the total value of your order. So you can go and browse the merchandise, again, by scanning the QR code or clicking the link that's appeared in the chat. So without more ado, I think the first thing we're going to do is to go to the news this week. So just give me 1 second to set this up. As I said, really truncated news this week because I've only had a couple of hours to put things together once we got our internet connection back. So we have the news. So let me just come back and sort out. Oh, did that not show? That's interesting. Right, let's try that. Hope you can all see that.
There we go.
There we go. So what happened there? That's the one. Okay, so the news is, as I said, very short this week, but let's have a look. So the big story, which you may have seen in the news this week, was the story that astronomers may have found life on the planet known as K212b. And I wanted to go through this story because it's not as it has been portrayed in the media, in most places in the media. There's a bit more to it than meets the eye. So I'm sure you may have seen this in the news. A Cambridge team studying the atmosphere of this planet say they've detected molecules which on Earth are only produced by simple organisms. And it's the second and more promising time that chemicals associated with life have been detected in the planet's atmosphere. But there's a lot more work to go yet before this discovery is confirmed. Now, the lead researcher is Professor Niku Madhusudan at Cambridge, and he said that he hopes to obtain that clinching evidence soon. And he said, this is the strongest evidence yet there's possibly life out there. I can realistically say that we can confirm this signal within 1 or 2 years. So obviously he's very excited about this being a sign of life. Now, this planet is in a class of planets called Hycean worlds, which means hydrogen plus ocean. They're more generally classed as mini Neptunes. In fact, this whole classification of Hycean planets is not universally accepted by astronomers. Their characteristics are that they have thick hydrogen atmospheres, but also surface oceans. So rather than being a complete gas giant, they do have surface oceans. And they haven't been confirmed, and this is the first one that has been suggested, is one of these Hycean worlds. However, the professor's group has found that the atmosphere does seem to contain the chemical signature of at least one of 2 molecules that are associated with life, dimethyl sulfide, or DMS, and dimethyl disulfide, DMDS. On Earth, these gases are produced by marine phytoplankton and bacteria. But this is only a 3 sigma level of certainty, and which means that it's not enough proof, if you like, to be accepted as fact. If it's a 5 sigma level, which is the level usually needed to accept something as fact, it would mean that it's 99.999% certain that it's unlikely to be anything else. So the difference between 3 and 5 sigma is quite a big one. As I said, these gases are produced by marine phytoplankton bacteria on the Earth, and Professor Madhusudan has suggested that the 2 gases are only produced by life. This is not true, because we found these compounds on other bodies in the solar system, such as Comet 67P, they are clearly produced by processes other than life. So scientists have suggested other reasons that they seem to be present, if they are present in the atmosphere of the planet, like volcanic activity and so on. Interestingly, Professor Madhusudan is the person who created the classifications of Hycean planets in the first place, which is rather interesting. And many astronomers are disputing the interpretation of the Webb data as being due to these two gases. And in his paper writing about this, there are 24 references at the end of it, which all refer to papers written by himself. So some people are suggesting that the professor has invented this classification of Hycean planets, which is not generally accepted, and now is suggesting that this is one of them and that it's got life on it. And he has actually said that these compounds are only produced by life when they're not, because we've found them on comets, which definitely don't have any life. So that'll be an interesting story to follow up. He may well be right. Time will tell, as they say. Now, hot off the press, the space probe Lucy has visited the second of the 5 asteroids that it's going to visit in total. And this asteroid is called Donald Johanson. And Lucy had an encounter with it at the weekend. And this is a video taken from stills of the encounter. And rather nice, I think, don't you?
Lovely.
Beautiful.
You know what I find interesting about this? We have seen New Horizons visited a double-lobed asteroid as well.
Yeah, this appears to be another one.
Yes, I think there's some thought that these are not so uncommon.
No. And I've noticed something else interesting about this series of images. I wonder whether you can spot what it is. Do you see that there are 4 large craters in a dead straight line there?
Where
on the right-hand lobe. Do you see that?
Yes, yes.
They're in a dead straight line. Is that chance, or what could that be? I wonder.
It could be some probably an object that actually broke up just as it came in.
Yeah.
It was already broken up there. This is a formation. When you see 4 in a line, it's called a cantina.
Right.
We have them on Earth. We can actually have them on Earth. They've been spotted by satellites on Earth, and they're on the moon as well.
And they're also on Phobos.
Sorry.
There's some on Phobos as well.
Yeah. So basically, what it is when items come up, it's either already been broken up or it's breaking up, coming in through. I mean, of course, it's very less likely on the moon because there's virtually no atmosphere to break it up. But obviously, they're broken up, and it comes in, and they said boom, 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 and gives you a long line. And like I said, it's called a cantina.
Yeah.
Very reminiscent of Comet Shoemaker-Levy 9, which has the same kind of quality.
Yeah.
When that went into the atmosphere of Jupiter, that was
that was amazing.
Yeah,
but I mean,
that's a lovely shot. It's a lovely shot.
It's beautiful animation.
I mean, I don't know what the exposure is, or we were talking earlier about it, because it seems very bright, as it may have a very high albedo, which is how we monitor how much light is reflected from objects. But there also seems to be a very deep, just the crater on the end there as well, on the right-hand lobe. So it's been hit quite big impact on there. So
do you see that? What looks like a boulder with a shadow there? Between the that line of craters in a row, between the second and third one, and down a bit, there's something with a distinct shadow there. You see? Yeah,
I can see it. Yeah.
I think they've adjusted the exposure for this because the still images were actually still brighter. So perhaps.
But as Lou said, we see this shape, this bell shape, this dumbbell shape, quite often now. So as you said, it's something that appears to be more and more common.
Yeah,
where two objects have come together and joined, basically.
yeah, absolutely,
So
absolutely.
because you mentioned 67P,
Yeah,
didn't you? Was it Churyumov Gerasimenko
well,
comet?
yeah,
See,
yeah.
Sure,
I
you're
said
off.
it. I could. That's one of the few Russian words I can say without losing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Just a little bit of information about this. At the time of the encounter, the asteroid was 139 million miles from the Earth. It measures 8 kilometers long and 3.5 kilometers wide at its widest point. So that's the size of it. The next encounter from Lucy will be on August the 12th, 2027. When it will fly by 3548 Eurybates, a Jupiter Trojan asteroid. This marks Lucy's first visit to a Trojan asteroid. Luke, could you just tell our viewers, in case they don't know, what a Trojan asteroid is?
Sure, yeah. There are places around the Earth as well, but around Jupiter, where there's kind of a gravitational well, and asteroids on either side of Jupiter. Asteroids tend to accumulate there, kind of gravitationally bound, and so that's what that is.
Right. Okay. Right. Eurybates is notable for having a small satellite named Keter, which Lucy also aims to observe during the encounter. So we've got just over 2 years until the next encounter. And it's very important to study these Trojan asteroids because we don't know an awful lot about them. So be interesting to see the next encounter, which we'll of course cover on Space Oddities when it happens.
Yeah, because I mean the asteroids we're going to look at, because there's two groups, isn't there, around Jupiter? One's called the Trojan camp, and one's called the Greek camp.
Yes, that's right.
all based on the Trojan Wars. And in the Trojan camp, if I'm getting this, no, in the Greek camp, there are actually two of these asteroids that actually have Greek names, because apparently they were to Trojan names, because during in the wars there were two spies in the Greek camp, so they've named two of the asteroids with Trojan names.
Interesting. I seem to
Yeah,
remember talking about this with you on Astro Radio years ago.
yeah, it's many moons ago. Of course, because just to remind people, Lucy got her name because Lucy's named after an. Let me get this right: Australopithecus type humanid, which are a precursor to Homo sapiens, and her fossil was found in a riverbed in Africa, and that she got the name, and they named her Lucy because at the time the Beatles were playing Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds at the time on the radio.
Right.
Also, Lucy being the oldest fossilized remains, or was, because I think there's a debate now whether or not they found something older.
Yeah.
But of course, because we're looking at our ancestors, these asteroids are from the very beginning of the solar system.
Yes.
So again, we're looking at the fossils from the solar system. So it's all interconnected. As you said, the actual name of Donald Johanson, that is the chap who found Lucy.
Yeah.
And they named this specially for him. So yeah,
Brilliant.
sorry.
Brilliant. Okay, well that's the news for today. Apologies that there's not more, as I said, but there will be more next week, undoubtedly. So let me just get back here. Okay, so yeah, Lou appears to be having camera problems. So there we are. Okay, what we're going to do now is move on to talk about tonight's main theme as part of Moon Month. We couldn't let Moon Month go by without discussing the whole issue of why people believe that the Apollo moon landings never happened. And
just pop in a minute, Andy. I just want to pop at what Derek said about that line of
it's a fossilized spaceship,
and that's the windows.
Could be. Yes,
You've sussed it. You've sussed it.
So as I was saying, the whole subject of moon landing deniers is a big one. Absolutely enormous thing to tackle, but we're going to do our best. If you have any views or comments or anything, viewers, do put them in the comments. So just let me set this up 1 second, and we will just go over here, go over there, and we'll just put this on the screen now. Okay. Okay, so the whole business of the moon landing deniers. Let's look at how it started, this whole idea that the Apollo moon landings never happened. And as I said, any comments, put them in the chat. And it started, believe it or not, way back in 1976, when an ex-Rocketdyne engineer, Bill Casing, published a book called "We Never Went to the Moon, America's $30 billion Swindle." Well, I think he was out on the cost anyway, because in 1960s dollars, it was only 21 billion. But anyway, that's a small thing. Now, he actually claimed that America never had the technological ability to go to the moon. And also, he claimed that several NASA employees involved in the whole Apollo project had met mysterious deaths, which nobody's ever been able to corroborate. He didn't even specify who he was talking about. He also said that humans cannot survive passing through the Van Allen radiation belts, which we know to be completely false. Yes, humans can pass through the Van Allen radiation belt and only receive possibly an X-ray's worth of radiation. And he claimed some inconsistencies in several photographs taken on the moon, and Daz will be telling you about those, or some of those anyway, a bit later. At the time, that book was largely ignored. He was sort of written off as a nutcase, if you like, in 1976. But then everything changed, because in 2001, the TV network Fox, that well-known source of factual information, aired a special entitled "Conspiracy Theory, Did We Land on the Moon?" Now, it popularized the whole idea that we never went to the moon. And it featured interviews with several well-known conspiracy theorists of the day, including Bill Casing himself, Brian O'Leary, and Bart Sibrel. And the show included alleged anomalies in NASA lunar photos and films, including the absence of stars in the sky, the American flag appearing to flutter, the odd behavior of shadows, and the lack of a visible blast crater beneath the lunar module. And again, we'll talk about the specifics of those a bit later. The only problem with the show was that nobody was invited to take part who would refute the claims. NASA were not asked to participate. The whole show was one-sided, pushing the idea that we never landed on the moon without any evidence to the contrary. And they also had interviews with several ex-NASA employees, and they selectively edited them to make it look as if the NASA employees were backing this whole conspiracy theory. And after that, what happened next was that social media, well, the internet and later social media came along, and there was a huge audience for this sort of stuff on the internet, and hundreds, perhaps thousands of YouTube videos. It's difficult to know the number because that information is known only to YouTube, but there are certainly several thousand, if not more, videos out there claiming that we never went to the moon. And again, they're all presented one-sided with no attempt to refute the conspiracy theories. In around 2010, NASA realized how much the moon hoax idea had proliferated, and they considered a public refutation and/or a book to refute the whole thing. But NASA eventually decided against it, realizing it would just pour oil on the flames. And those who believe this sort of stuff would never accept that they were wrong, which is remained the same to this day. With the rise of social media, the moon landings hoax conspiracy theories spread like wildfire. And around what happened then was around 2018, the flat earthers sort of came on the scene, and they incorporated this moon landing hoax conspiracy theory into what they believed, because a lot of them claim that space itself doesn't exist, and therefore if space doesn't exist, the moon landings could never have happened. And the moon, they say, is either a reflection of the Earth in the supposed watery firmament surrounding the Earth, or it's an artificial light placed in the sky by NASA. And there's a lot of disagreement among flat earthers about exactly what the moon is, but all of them are united in saying it's not what NASA say it is. I don't know why they keep picking on NASA, because it's astronomy rather than space exploration. But they completely refute every bit of astronomical evidence that the moon is not a reflection of the Earth in the firmament or a big light in the sky placed there by NASA. But what's happened is the proliferation of these moon hoaxes has made it impossible on social media to talk about anything to do with the moon. You mention anything to do with the moon on social media, you show photographs, you post photographs of the moon, and you have a sort of a holy trinity of moon landing deniers, flat earthers, and assorted Bible quoting religious fundamentalists, and they appear like moths around a flame. And it really is impossible now on social media to discuss anything to do with the moon, and I do mean anything. Even if you say that the moon is, you know, a big lump of rock orbiting the Earth, they will turn up and deny it and quote the Bible at you, and the Earth is flat and the moon's a big, you know. It's just really, really, really sad that you can no longer have discussions about the moon on social media, because it does attract these people. And it's equally sad that 24 years after the Fox show, the same old tired points about the flag fluttering and the lack of a crater under the lunar module and the shadows and etc., they're still trotted out by all the moon landing deniers, yet they've been completely debunked countless thousands of times. And so there we are. Now, public belief in these conspiracy theories, well, according to a recent survey, 8% of Americans believe that we never went to the moon. But surprisingly, in Europe, the figure is actually much higher. And the EU did a survey in 2021 about public understanding of science, and they found that 25% of Europeans surveyed deny the moon landings happened. The figure is notably higher within the age range 16 to 25. So younger people seem to believe it more than older people at 35%. But this was only a small sample of 7,000 Europeans, and only in France, Germany, Hungary, Italy, and the Netherlands, Poland, and Spain. So it wasn't a Europe-wide survey. So the fact that it was a small sample in just some countries may have had probably did have a bearing on the results. But you've got to put that in context. For example, in a separate 2021 survey by the European Community's official statistics agency, Eurostat, they consulted 37,000 Europeans right across the continent. 28% of those believe that the cure for cancer exists but is hidden from the public by commercial interests. 26% agree that viruses have been produced in government laboratories to control our freedom. And for some reason, Bulgarians were the highest group that answered yes to those questions, for some reason. So in context, what it means is that it's not just the moon landing deniers, it's a whole range of countless conspiracy theories which people believe. And it does speak to a mistrust of science in general, a lack of understanding of basic scientific ideas, and poorly educated populations. So that's the whole history of it, and where we are today. So does anybody have any observations about that?
Did you say Bulgarians?
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the Wombles, isn't it? Well, right, okay then. So you were talking about the numbers. Now, I've got some numbers here. I'm not going to go through them, but basically, there was as you said, back in when Mr. Whatever his name is wrote his book. I've got it written here somewhere. he wrote his book, then of course it did start to grow. Then of course you got the flat earthers jumped on board. Then you had the Fox, and then there was a big rise in deniers when they've done surveys year after year after year. But by 2019, that was starting to drop.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was starting to drop. But what happened in 2019, 2020?
COVID.
COVID. And of course, that's when everybody was sat at home with nothing better to do on the internet, reading all these things and believing them, doing no research. And this is how these sort of things work. And of course, as you said, now it's risen. The amount of people, the deniers, have actually risen. And it was interesting when you said in, I think it was the UK, you said between, was it 19 and 20, 30, what was it, 19 to 25-year-olds or something?
Yeah, that was the small survey among 6 European countries.
Yeah, I mean, it was, and it's, like I said, it's surprising how it's the younger adults that are believing these things.
Well, yeah, I think Daz, obviously, those of us who lived through the Apollo era, who lived through the moon landings, obviously we're going to believe it because we lived through it and we know that it happened. Younger people are not being educated in science. This is a subject we've talked about before, that science is not taught correctly because it doesn't start off in schools telling children what science is and how it works and how we know what we know. Everything is just presented as fact and information without any attempt at teaching kids how to analyze information critically. So it's no surprise that so many people, especially younger people, have not got the mental machinery, if you like, to evaluate whether something they're told is correct or not. Now, I'm not saying that when I was young, and you and Roger will remember as well, we were never taught the process of science. We were only taught, learn this for the exam, basically. So how did we come to be, if you like, I don't want to use the word rational, but certainly skeptical. And if you haven't got skepticism, you are going to accept these outlandish ideas. All I would say is that I think, there was a lot more respect towards science and scientists in those days, that they could be trusted. Now, I'm not saying that science has done anything to erode that trust from the public, but as we saw with COVID, there's a huge number of people who are very anti-science, who don't trust scientists, who don't believe what scientists tell them. And to fill that vacuum, they come up with all these weird and batty conspiracy theories. Lou, have you got any thoughts on that?
Oh, yes, dear God, yes.
I thought you might.
Well, a few things. First, just to continue this particular part of the discussion, I think that science is viewed as untouchable, as mysterious, and perhaps a little frightening. Most of the people, I would say, at least in the United States, have essentially no understanding of science. The area that I live, that's in near Johns Hopkins University and NASA Goddard Space Flight Center and University of Maryland, NASA headquarters, this is a very chosen few people, and in various little places around the country. In most parts of the country, this kind of information is completely foreign. And so it's easier to deny it than to admit that this is something quite out of your sphere, quite out of your control. That's my thought.
Right.
Now, getting on to the issue of the evidence for the moon landing, I had the pleasure of working at, and in fact managing, the National Space Science Data Center for a number of years at NASA Goddard. And the NSSDC, well, now it's called the National Space Science Data Coordinated Data Archive. Okay, they changed the name, but it began as the archive, the deep archive for all NASA remote sensing data, astrophysics, heliophysics, planetary science. And it's changed its roles a little bit. It's now a little more kind of geared towards planetary science, but its goal is, its function is to preserve this data forever, for posterity, right? Not so much to build tools or ensure easy access or anything like that, but to preserve it. Okay. So we have, I know because I used to work with the operations group there, we have tons of microfilm from the lunar surface. All right. And I think I haven't kept up lately, but I think that's in some form of being digitized from microfilm, right? Obviously, you want to do that to preserve. The other thing is that at NASA, we have high-powered lasers. We have a laser facility that bounce signals off the moon. Well, those signals are bounced off of reflectors on the moon left by the Apollo astronauts. The Apollo astronauts also left the LSEP, the Lunar Surface Experiment Package, which measures a few physical parameters, including a mass spectrometer, by the way, which every time a little atom or molecule drifts down into it, it measures what kind it is, and therefore the moon has an atmosphere. But I've worked with this data, and this was left on the moon by the Apollo astronauts. So I'm probably a little bit privileged that I have some firsthand knowledge of this kind of data that we are archiving at NASA Goddard. And I think that my last comment is I think conspiracies are fun. So people just enjoy it, why not? So my thoughts.
I mean, exactly. Yeah, they are. They're just because really, when you really start to look into all of this, it really does. It becomes a bit of a swamp. So you've got to treat it as a bit of fiction with what they come out with. And I mean, Andy was saying about the supposedly people who died. Well, a lot of them, a couple of them were astronauts who died in flight in aircraft accidents, hitting birds, or hitting buildings in poor weather. And also one of them, if I remember right, was in danger. He ejected, but he ejected too late. I mean, I could give you their names, but there are some notable names here. You got in the book, or whoever's produced this says Virgil, Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger B. Chaffee killed in the fire during the plugs out test preceding Apollo 1, which why they think that they had to dispose of those, I do not know. There's a chap called Edward Gibbons who was killed in a car accident. The chap who was ejected, the ejection seat, was Clifton Williams. And there was again, most of them were test pilots in the X-15 program and things like that. But then you've also got a chap here. I think I was talking to you about him, Andy, a chap called Thomas Ronald Barron, who was an employee of North American Aviation.
Oh, yeah.
He was an employee. He died in an automobile collision with a train, and literally all his family was killed in that accident. And it was 6 days after testifying before the Republican Olin E. Teague's House Subcommittee on NASA oversight hearings held about the Apollo 1 fire, after which he was fired, and then he died 6 days later. And again, this has all been dragged into this, made into was he taken out because he was telling too much. I mean, he was basically sort of like a controller, making sure everything was right, everything was being done right, all the right materials were being used. But it's one of these things you hear very little about, Mr. Barron. And he becomes very big in the actual, as I said, the investigations as regards the Apollo 1, because he had these, he produced 2 reports. One was about 20 odd pages long, if I remember right, but he did a more intensive thing. I mean, he was telling things about, things about employees actually at NASA who were working on things. They had industrial alcohol for cleaning things, and they were drinking it. They were mixing it with water, and they were drinking it on the job. There was other things about people were being moved to jobs that they weren't trained for, and using machinery that they had no training for, and things like that. But then, of course, he whistle blew, and then next thing he's dead. But yeah, this business about, I mean, why they killed the Apollo 1 crew, I do not know. What's their thinking behind that?
It's
But
and
yes, it is. Sorry.
as regards this thing about the lasers firing at the reflectors on the moon, I've actually seen that being done. Because down at Herstmonceux in Sussex, which used to be the site of the Royal Greenwich Observatory, as you probably know, we were asked if we wanted to see the laser ranger, and there's a small dome there on one side of a valley, and they fire the thing up. The dome opens, and this enormous laser rises up out of the dome. It was like something out of James Bond. And across the other side of the valley, there's another dome with a target painted on it. And they first of all calibrate the laser by measuring the distance to that dome, which obviously should never change. And then they fire the laser at the moon. And we were there when they were doing that, and came back, and we actually got to see the figures coming up on the screen of the moon's distance. So obviously that had fired at a reflector on the moon. Now, one claim made about this by moon landing deniers is that you couldn't possibly fire a laser with that precision to such a tiny retroreflector on the moon. Well, what you have to realize is that when you fire a laser beam, it spreads out like any beam of light does. And by the time that laser beam gets to the moon, it's actually 1/2 a mile wide. So you don't need to be actually that precise, and it still bounces back and can be detected. So that's another fallacy that.
Yeah, because the laser is that much weaker when you get the return signal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because as you said, it's because it's spread out.
It
But
spreads
there's
out.
one also big thing that really very rarely gets brought up, but it's a big thing that debunks most of this. Why didn't the Russians blow the whistle on them?
Right.
They also were sending things to the moon. They were landing things on the moon.
Yeah.
They had the capability of tracking and communicating with these things. And they also, and if you, in all Russian history books, they accept that the moon landings were true. Now, they were in a Cold War.
No,
Why wouldn't they blow the whistle?
And that brings us on to another subject. How many people would you need to have kept quiet for 60 years if there were a conspiracy to stage the moon landings, if you like? Well, if you take, first of all, NASA employees, and then you look at the contractors. Now, around the height of the Apollo program, NASA employed around 400,000 contractors. Then you've got the universities that did all the scientific work for Apollo. You've got all of the engineering firms who made the parts spread across 50 states, more or less. And if you assume that each one of those people has got 3 members in their family who they would doubtless tell, because you can't shut people up, that many people up for that length of time. So if they told 3 people, and each one of those people had, say, 3 friends, in no time at all, the number of people you would need to have kept silent about this so-called conspiracy for 60 years runs into 2.5 to 3 million. And that's just in the United States. And then, as you said, Daz, the Russians tracked Apollo, all the Apollo missions, all the way to the moon, including the descents, with radar. So they know it happened. So you've got the same thing in Russia. So you probably got another few million people in Russia that you would need to keep quiet about that conspiracy. And then you move to the UK, you look at the media. What did the media think they were covering? Well, again, they would have had to be in on the conspiracy, and they've got family and friends who they would have told. So in no time at all, if you put forward the idea that it's been kept secret for 60 years that the moon landing never happened, you would rapidly involve maybe 10 million people. Could it be ever possible to keep 10 million people quiet for 60 years?
So that's why we have such a huge budget deficit. I have wondered. Where is that money
That's
going?
where the money's going.
They obviously didn't pay me enough, but I'm sure others.
But you know, just ask the question: could you keep 10 million people completely silent for 60 years about something that was covered up? Obviously not. It's a ridiculous idea. So from that point of view, the whole moon denier things doesn't get off the ground, if you'll forgive the pun, at all. You'd need to keep millions of people quiet. Does that make any sense? Has that ever been done in history? And what did they threaten these people with to keep them quiet? And what did they threaten their sons and daughters and grandchildren with to keep them quiet?
And why?
And their relatives.
What's the payoff here? I mean,
yeah.
You know.
Exactly. Why is this all? Why was this done in the first place?
Exactly. Now, I mean, Bill. I mean, there was, because even before Bill Casing wrote his book, there were even people denying that Apollo 8 went to the moon landing. So this actually predates the actual landings itself. They said that they didn't go to the moon. And so this actually started from the get-go. Now, this chap, as we were talking about, Bill Casing, the reason he only had any leverage or possible people believed him is he was actually what was he? He actually worked at Rocketdyne, and
right.
who were producing the engines for some of these machines. And he was working on Mercury, Gemini, the Atlases, and the Apollo probe. And he argued that you don't need an engineering science degree to determine that a hoax was being perpetrated. So he worked all through this, and he was actually part of the team that sent them to the moon. But then he decided that he was going to, you know, basically, I mean, he's got no evidence, as you say before. It's all supposition, and it just doesn't make sense at all. But I mean, if somebody wants to go and read it and gives us a report, then we'll see what his evidence was. But there was no evidence, because we know
presumably in a year or two, and depending on how schedules slip, the moon landing deniers will have even new evidence to challenge and to question, right? As Artemis 3 lands on the moon, or perhaps challenge Artemis 2, just orbiting the moon with people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, what was his actual reasoning? His reasoning with his book claims that NASA lacked the technical expertise to put a man on the moon. The absence of stars and lunar surface photographs, so that's where that started. There are unexplained optical anomalies in the photographs taken on the moon. Now, there's one of them is that they show a moon rock, and it looks to have appear to have the figure C printed on it or engraved on it, and they say, well, must be a prop letter. But what they've said it was a hair caught in between the sheets of glass that was on the actual camera.
So they went to all this trouble as well to make it look authentic, yet they left a rock with a big C on it. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, big C on it. I mean, we'll be going through some of this in a little while. I'll be showing you some photographs there, actually. Again, we got the talk about Thomas Barron being killed. But he's done publicity. I mean, he's been on opera. Oh, there's a claim to fame. He was a participant in the documentary, the Fox documentary, Did We Land on the Moon, in 2001. And he's also appeared in documentary Moon Landing, The Greatest Hoax, which was uploaded to YouTube on March the 5th. So if you wish, you can just go on to YouTube and you should be able to see what this chap's all about.
Yeah.
And then make your own minds up. But don't be conned. Don't be drawn in.
The only advice I can give you, viewers, if you have people, friends, family, people at work who do deny the moon landings ever happened, the only advice I could be is don't get bogged down in the tiny details. For example, if they say, why are there no stars in the sky? You can say, because it wasn't exposing for the sky, it was exposing for the foreground. Then almost always they will come back and say, yeah, but what about this? And what about that? And you can go on like that forever, because they will never, ever, ever concede a point about it. They won't. And you can go on for hours with those discussions and never get anywhere. So what I would do, and this is just my personal opinion, of course, is just start off by saying, how did they manage to keep literally millions of people completely silent for decades? Do you think that's at all likely? And if so, how was it done? And start from there. Don't get bogged down in the tiny picture. Look at the bigger picture. And good luck, because I've never managed to get anywhere, even with that argument. Once these people get this in their heads, in my experience, no power on earth can shift it. I've never known one moon landings denier come back after a discussion about it and say, yes, I was wrong. Once people get this, people are really, really, really hesitant to admit that they're wrong.
Yeah.
Especially if they've got big egos, which comes into it somewhere along the line.
Or just any ego, any sense of
any
self.
ego. Yeah, absolutely.
And you created a world for yourself that it's jarring. It's
absolutely. Can I just pick up on a few comments here? Kev says all the folks you state that would need to be in on the conspiracy is wrong in his opinion. Great, Kev. Tell us why you think it's wrong, and we'll discuss it. Pauline says this seems to compare with the Area 51 alien landing issue. Yes, absolutely, which predated that by many years. We see very little debate about that. Well, I think once the firm evidence was produced that it was actually a balloon that came down in Roswell, a secret balloon that was studying Soviet nuclear blasts or potential Soviet nuclear blasts. I think that made a lot of people realize. But then again, moon landing deniers never accept facts. So I think maybe Roswell is getting a little old in the tooth now, perhaps. I don't know. And it's not to do with NASA as well, which is another thing, because people who are flat earthers, religious fundamentalists, moon landing deniers, they have this universal hate of NASA. A lot of them think that NASA is the only space agency in the world. They think that NASA has everything to do with space. They do astronomy, they do space exploration, they do this, they do this. So anything to do with space, NASA is their whipping boy, if you like. And I think that's because Roswell had nothing to do with NASA. I think that's, and indeed happened long before NASA was formed. I think that may be it, but I'm just guessing there. But thank you for that, Pauline.
I think Roswell does actually exist. I've seen Independence Day.
Yeah,
they rebuilt it.
Of course. Ian says even thousands is too many. Well, not really. When you've got 400,000 subcontractors, Ian, and their friends and family, you're into the hundreds of thousands already. So no, thousands is definitely not too many. So there we are. Also, just completely unrelated, just before I lose it, I saw it up here somewhere. Just give me a second. Oh, Gerard, thank you so much for your donation, sir. Thank you very much indeed for that. Sorry, I didn't say that earlier. And yes, Paul wanted to talk about our Gemini series for Moon Month. And he said, if I can just get this up. Oh, why is that not working? Hang on. Just give me 1 second. I've got window problems here. Here we are. Paul says that Gemini series was also great. Thanks for your work on this endeavor. absolute pleasure, Paul.
Yeah.
And you have to thank Daz for that, because Daz did most of the donkey work on that. Not that I'm suggesting in any way he resembles a donkey, but although, but yeah, Daz and I worked on this together. But Daz has done 90% of the work on the Gemini series and the upcoming Apollo series as well, which we'll be posting before the end of the month. So
please look at the other one. I mean, we were looking at viewing figures for these, and it seems very strange how, well, it's not strange, it's understandable, but people go to the well-known ones. You got Shepherd, you got Glenn, and things like that, but they don't. I mean, I think it was Apollo Gemini 4. That was the first spacewalk. And yet very few people have looked at it. It was White, astronaut White, who did the first spacewalk. But literally all of these Geminis, the Mercuries and Geminis, because we put out originally a history of, which was just a basic run through. But then we did in each individual one, because although everything looked like it was a success, there were some major problems on these early flights. On virtually all of them, something went wrong. Some of them that could have resulted in loss of life. So
did.
Have a listen. I think the longest is 20 odd minutes. But then if it's 20 odd minutes, that usually means there's some interesting stuff in there.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I'm getting, as I said, I'm into the Apollo ones now, and of course, as we get into the Apollo ones, I'm just about to do 13. That's probably going to be an hour and a half long.
Yeah.
So,
Luke points out that it was American spacewalk. Yes, you're quite right.
The first US moonwalk.
Alexei Leonov had a glorious career as a cosmonaut, actually.
Yeah, because I think he would possibly also have been the first Russian. The first Russian on the moon, but if he'd survived. But
anyway, need to get back to the subject in hand. But just before we do, so I forget who it was. Somebody last week was suggesting that we, and do forgive me, I can't remember who it was, but somebody was suggesting we did a Mars month after Moon Month, and we decided yes, we are going to, and we are going to do a Mars month in September this year. We're not going to do it during the summer because everybody will be away, and the viewing figures are never that good during the summer because of holidays. So we're going to leave it till September, which will give us ample time to get it together. So we are going to do Mars month on Space Oddities here in September, and we hope you'll look forward to that as much as we are, because I know Lou will be absolutely over the moon about that. What do you think, Lou?
Yes, I think I'm over the moon and over Mars about it. Mars is the place that's next.
Yeah,
Moon's our training ground if we allow it to be.
Absolutely.
And then Mars is next. So very exciting.
Yeah, and if you like, the moon is our training ground doing this first dedicated month. So we'll tackle Mars in September, and we're up to suggestions what we do after that. All right, getting back to the thing in hand, Daz, you've got some slides to show us, which illustrate
some of these, some of the actual what the deniers use as proof, and how they've basically been debunked. So basically, here we are. Hope you can see that. Now, this is the chap who basically started it all with his book. Famous or infamous book, whatever you want to call it, Bill Casing, and he was the chap who started all of this. And as I said, he actually worked for Rocketdyne, so he actually worked on virtually all of the Apollo missions. So, right, there we go. Right, now, what people have been saying is that basically, as you can see here, you've got Aldrin and Neil Armstrong training in a mock-up situation. And this is one of the things that the conspiracy theorists say, that because they had the mock-ups, all they had to do was put a back screen up, of course, with no stars. And this is how they filmed the actual moon walks as such. But as we know that, but this will be debunked as we go further into this. I will let you make up your own mind in this. Sorry, I'm just getting rid of something. That's it. Thank you. So here we are. Now we've got here an image. Now this is the infamous waving flag on the moon scenario. Now this is a cropped photograph of Buzz Aldrin saluting the flag. You can just see his fingers from his right hand just appearing in front of his visor there. So he's actually saluting the flag. Now look at the flag. It's all wrinkled. It's all creased. It's bent. You know, it looks as though it is blowing in the actual wind. But the next image is exactly the same image. He's completed his salute. The views actually changed a bit. Armstrong actually moved. But as you can see, the flag is exactly the same. It's not blowing. And what this is down to is that when this was actually stored into the, what we actually stored, okay, then whatever. What was ever stored when it was stowed in the actual thing itself, it was all creased up and it was all folded. And so this is what has actually happened. This was also on a spring boom. This is a very narrow, very thin hole, which they could only push in a few inches. So it wasn't very stable. And of course, there is that uh, quote from Buzz Aldrin that as they left the moon's surface, he saw the flag actually fall over because it wasn't very stable from the get-go. But as soon as they let go of the pole, that flag did not move at all. Now, the next image I'll just show you. It was a GIF and it actually showed you the two images, one after the other, and you can see the flag did not move at all. But unfortunately, the GIF won't work on here. Now, this is the reflector that Andy was on about, that we can fire a laser at and get back. And basically, it's used for science, and it's measuring the distance to the moon most of the time. And that's how we know that the moon is slowly moving away. So we all know that because it was on the Big Bang, so it's got to be true. Next, we got here. Now, there was also a claim that when in the later moon landings, when they left the moon and they the actual lander, well, not the landing stage, but the top part of it actually left, there was no flames, there was no exhaust, there was no anything. Well, the thing is, the actual lander itself, the ascent vehicle from the moon, used a hypergolic Aerozine 50/N204 mixture. Now, hypergolic means that when the two components of the fuel are mixed, they ignite literally instantly. They don't need an ignition system. Now, these hypergolic fuels burn very pure, and you see very little in the way of a flame. Now, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but I'm circling the engines on this Titan II rocket, and this is using hypergolic. This is steam being created because the water is being sprayed up onto the platform. But as you can see, you can only just make out the actual flames. They're almost they're translucent. They're almost non-existent. And just to carry on with this, here is a Titan II using non-hypergolic. It's using kerosene, and you can see you've got a very definite flame there. And of course, all this steam again is because of the water and things like that. But you've definitely got a flame there. So using the hypergolic, you won't see a flame. And this is actually Apollo 11 leaving, just taking off. And again, that's using kerosene, and you can see there's a very definite flame there. So what they're saying, and here is a view from one of the Apollos, and you can see it's just discarded this ring, which was protecting the engines of this section here, which could be the second or third stage. The engines have lit. You can't see a flame, but you can see they are interacting with the actual ring of the that's just been ejected. So although you can't see the flame, there is one there. And you've only just got to look at, we were talking earlier, when you see a stage 2 of a Falcon 9 light, you don't see the flame, but you see the bell of the actual rocket glow yellow, glow orange. And that's because the reason for that is that most heat loss, the heat loss from the engines is through light radiation. It's not through convection. It's not through anything like that because there's no atmosphere. So the heat is radiated away as light. So that's how you keep them cool. So that's why you don't see a flame actually. And of course, there's no atmosphere or anything for the flame from the ascent vehicle to actually interact with. So we've got the lunar. One of the other complaints was that there was no crater underneath the descent vehicle. As you can see, this is looking underneath the actual lander. It looks like they've already started dumping their rubbish there. But you can see the regolith has been disturbed, but not by that much. We've got to remember this engine was throttling right back. There isn't any atmosphere for the engine to be pushing hard against, which would cause more disruption here. And remember, this regolith is only a few inches thick. So there will be no massive crater where it's actually landed. It's not like when the Starship first took off. But that is basically because there's no atmosphere. There's nothing for it to really thrust down onto. So it has disturbed. I mean, we know Buzz Aldrin said we're kicking up dust, just as almost as they were just about to touch down themselves. But there was actually a small but very shallow crater underneath there. So there was a crater. It wasn't going to blow everything away like it would on Earth because it's not having to work against. I mean, the gravity's less, and also there's no thick atmosphere for it to push against, which would disturb all of that regolith. So I hope that makes sense. Now, another one is who took the photograph of Armstrong coming down the ladder? Well, the answer is here. There was actually a camera on the side of the module as it came to the landing module. So that came, I don't know whether that was, I'm assuming that was folded up. It's all opened up now. You can see the camera on the top of the rectangular piece here, and it's looking directly at the ladder. So that's how we got the first images. So that's how that was done. There wasn't anyone else there. You know, there wasn't a Stanley Kubrick standing there directing and producing these images, which was another thing that they said when you go back to it was produced on a sound stage. Now this is a photograph of Buzz Aldrin. Now this is the original photograph. And again, this is one where they say it was done on a film set. Because what they did is they then adjusted the contrast, and it made it look as though he was being spotlighted by a spotlight. So you know, as you would find on a sound stage, and so this is one of their reasons for why. I would just go back so you can compare them. That's the original photograph. Adjust the contrast, and it looks like he's standing in a spotlight. You know, being framed on a sound stage. Another thing I would just point out here, and you can see if you, of course, this is an iconic picture of him. If you look in his visor, you can see Neil Armstrong. But what you can also see is it's Armstrong's shadow. You can't really see it actually, no, but you can see the shadows here are also different. So what it is he's actually stood. If you look in his visor, he's actually stood quite close to Armstrong's stood close to the lander. Now the lander is actually covered in foil, the gold and silver foil, and of course that will create reflections of light. It will reflect the light back and all that. And this is what's given us two different shadows. You've got a shadow there, and then you've got this piece here, and you can see the shadow on the end is pointing that way. And that's because the actual reflection off the foil is actually forcing that to the shadow to go in a different direction. Now, also another thing they say here is the shadows here are all sort of like mismatched; they're all over the place. So there's multiple light sources, but that is just an effect of the contours actually in the regolith and in the small meteorite craters. So again, the shadow thing is also basically blown out of the water.
And in fact, you can see the landing pad.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, just see the corner of the landing pad there. Yeah.
Bottom right, you can see the landing pad of the LEM. So they
Yeah,
were very close to the LEM, and that's where the illumination was coming from.
Yeah,
reflecting
that rod that's
off the
actually
foil.
sticking out was one of the sensors that told them it was they come down from the bottom of the pad, and it told them when they had actually made contact
Yeah.
with the surface. Now let's go to these stars. Now this is an exposure from the International Space Station of the Challenger. Was it Atlantis re-entry? But it is a slow exposure, a long exposure. It's 1.5 seconds at f2.8, so that's a very large aperture and quite a long exposure. And that's you can see the Atlantis doing its re-entry. You can see the edge of the atmosphere, but look what's above it: stars.
Mm.
This is because this is actually taken from the moon, the dark side. It's nighttime side. So what's actually being lit is by moonlight, not sunlight. So they were able to up the length of the. You can tell it's a long shot because you can see how long this trail is, and also they opened up the aperture, and if you can see the ISO is 10,000. So that's how they were able to. And lo and behold, what pops out is the stars. We've got another example of why. Now this is a daytime, the day side image of the International Space Station from the Space Shuttle Atlantis, and of course they've had to adjust the settings to take because it's a very short exposure because all of this would have blotted out the light from the Earth would have blotted out the actual International Space Station. You wouldn't get this detail, but because it's so short, the exposure time is very short. You can't pick out the stars. There's no there are stars there, but you can't see them. There's the shutter is not open, or the aperture is not open long enough to be able to pick out the stars. If you could see the stars, you wouldn't be able to see the details that you've got here. I think I've got a couple more of those. Oh no, this one. Another one was that they were complaining that on the cameras that the astronauts using when they were walking on the moon, they had inside the camera a glass plate which had etched on them these crosses. Now the crosses, you can see the cross just to the right of this image, and what they were saying is they couldn't have been on the camera because it goes behind this object. Well, what it is what they've done is this is not the original photograph. This is a replica, a reproduction. And when they reproduce them, whether it's through uh, and in a photographic lab or a duplication machine, they overexpose them, and this has actually burnt out the end of this cross. So the cross is not actually behind the object. It's still there, but because it's so thin, the actual brightness of this object is actually burnt it out, so you can't see it. And I have another image here of the stars and stripes. Now this is a zoomed in image. It's not waving again. We've already sorted that out. That was just these are just creases that were made when it was stowed away. But again, you can see in the bright areas where it's white, the cross is virtually disappeared. But in the red, where it's not, the reflection is not so bright, you can still see the cross. You can actually see a faint line there, but what they were saying is that they were actually drawn in pencil. So they've got an answer for everything. But last of all, if you don't believe us, there is a picture from the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter. It's a photo of Apollo 17 landing site. And you can see here, you've got the lander itself just sat there. And then you can see the ASLEP equipment. You can see some of the craters have been highlighted. Then you've got the LRV, the lunar little truck thing just to the side there. And that was taken after the event, and you can even see where their little trails of footprints of where they've been. So at the end of the day, I'm convinced that we went to the moon. It's up to everybody else to make their minds up, but beware of fakes. Okay, then? Thank you very much.
Right, thank you, Daz. That's great. So there we are. So that's our look into the whole business of moon landing deniers. As I said earlier, in my experience, people who don't think we went to the moon are never going to have their minds changed by simple things like facts. So, but that is common among all conspiracy theories. It's not just moon landing deniers, whether it's vaccines, whether it's anything else. There are millions of conspiracy theories out there. People are just not swayed by facts once they get these things in their head. So we hope you enjoyed that. As I said, next week, as our last live stream in April as part of Moon Month, it will be the Great Moon Quiz. So we hope you'll be along for that, which should be a bit of fun, if nothing else. So what we're going to do now is go over to Roger with this week's Look at the Sky and the weekly viewers gallery.
Yes. Right then. Okay, so we're working our way through to the end of April. And as we get towards the end of April, we get to a new moon. But there we go. So we are now experiencing the full galaxy season now, with Leo dominating the southern horizons and Virgo coming up round behind it. And we say farewell to Orion, unfortunately. Jupiter's still at a reasonable height when we have sunset, so that's not too bad. And we've got Mars dominating the southwestern skies. But yeah, so we're starting to head towards the summer constellations and all those lovely things that we will be getting to see from those constellations ourselves, and also the Milky Way coming up through later on in the year. But before sunrise, we've still got Venus, Saturn, Neptune and Mercury, although with the bright skies coming up through, you'd be lucky to just see Venus and maybe Saturn. But there is some mention that you will see a smiley face of Venus, Saturn and a crescent moon next week. But I doubt many people will actually be able to see that, because the brightness of the sky will probably make seeing Saturn rather difficult to see. But we'll have a go anyway. We like a challenge. But we're still getting to see some of the planets before sunrise, so that's all good. Right. So we've got Comet Swan, but it seems to be going to be a bit of a damp squib. As it's got nearer to the sun, it's becoming much smaller than predicted, and it's getting a lot fainter than we've experienced. So I think it's not looking too good for the northern hemisphere. Whether the southern hemisphere,
Sorry, are you seriously saying there's another comet that's turned out to be a damp squib? I don't believe it.
Well, just for a change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like meteor showers, hundreds an hour.
Yeah. Well, that's not been too good either. I think I might have only got a couple through the whole of last night on the camera, so we'll see. Anyway, we have a gallery. Not a very big gallery, unfortunately, this week, but we do have some images. So our first one is the Draco triplet from Jerry DeLay with his usual setup. And these are the So we've got one edge on. We've got one sort of fuzzy in the middle, and then we've got a nice spiral galaxy on the left-hand side.
That's lovely.
Beautiful.
But
Yeah.
there are a couple of other fainter galaxies in the background as well. But
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. It's
they're
lovely.
sort of
Lovely.
nicely lined up there.
Beautiful. Lovely image. Look at that.
Mm.
Well done, sir.
Yes, impressed. So we've got one from Lee, and he's been using his C star again to get M13 in the constellation of Hercules, and he's got 94.5 minutes
Nice.
on this. A long time for a little S50, and this is what
Oh,
he's
look
got.
at that.
Oh,
It's really spectacular, isn't it? M13.
it is.
It really is.
never
And of
know.
course, we've got a message on the way there as well, haven't we? From the Arecibo dish. It's on its way. So
Yeah. So we've got some amazing pictures. I think Lee's managing to get the processing done rather well on these C stars.
yeah, because you can photograph in RAW, so you can take them into Photoshop or anything like that and do your usual processing. I'm just, if Lee could just pop into the because I know he's in the chat. Did you use the as they call it, the wedge to do the to excuse me, to actually follow the M13 across the sky, or was it have you cropped this one? Because that's a beautiful image. Absolutely
It is.
fantastic.
It is.
Yeah.
Smashing.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's got the galaxy in the top left corner as well.
Yeah,
Yep.
nice.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's been very nicely rendered, and the resolution is awesome on that.
Yeah, perfect image. Well done, Lee.
Right. And then we've got our final selection from Kenneth over in Norway, and this was taken at the weekend of some aurora.
Oh, look at
Oh, I want to see.
Not that it makes us jealous or anything.
No, not at all. Not at all.
I mean, we did have over the past week possibilities that we were going to get some aurora, but the weather here. I mean, I've had wall-to-wall cloud every. But yes, it looks very, very, very. That's gorgeous. That's gorgeous. Because there is there's a lot of action going on. We were talking earlier about the. Lee says he was using a wedge. That's great. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
But we there is a lot of action going on the sun. We were talking earlier that there is a humongous again, and after 2 weeks ago, if you remember, I said we had a very large coronal hole, and it. I think it probably could be maybe the same one back. It's shrunk a bit, but as it's going across the thing, it's actually grown again. And it virtually covers the southern hemisphere, but they're also in the northern hemisphere. There's 3 smaller coronal holes, and there's another one in the south, smaller one. But there is also a huge. I think I counted 8 active regions that are on as well. So the things are happening. Just stay by your beds and stay by your alerts. And be ready to jump out if you get any clear skies. So,
Anyway, getting back to this image, it's a wonderful image, Kenneth. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Wonderful couple of images. Look at the colours, are amazing, aren't they? Look at the variety in colours you've got there.
Yeah.
Very well captured indeed, sir. I love that.
Gorgeous, isn't it?
Thank you so much.
Well, Kenneth gets them so often, it's sort of just quite easy for him to get hold of them, actually.
He goes, those bloody lights again, pull the curtains. So,
yeah, well, I mean, you don't see them from the house.
Yeah. What I do like is you've got also the reflection on the right-hand side in the pond, actually, and on the left-hand side. It's really nice.
Yeah, yes. Well done, sir.
The fjord, because we know Kevin's up north.
So,
yes. Okay, so that concludes our gallery and what's in the night sky.
Well, thank you very much, Roger. That's absolutely brilliant.
Very good.
Thank you very much. Don't forget, viewers, if you would like to send your images into the gallery, please attach them to an email and mail them to gallery@spaceoddities.space, and we will do the necessary with them. And don't forget, you get your own gallery on the Space Oddities website, which is https://spaceoddities.space. And we're getting a lovely collection of images on the website now, and it's looking really good. So thank you all so much for your continued submission of your wonderful images, because we love looking at them, and I'm sure the rest of our viewers do as well. And thank you to Roger particularly for putting them together every week into the viewers gallery. And if you would like to contact us at any time, then you can email us at info@spaceoddities.space with whatever you want to say. We're always happy to hear from you. So yes, Kenneth actually says, it ruined my Polaris flare and M101 session. so there we are. The bad luck, but look at the result you got, Kenneth. Swings and roundabouts, swings and roundabouts. I'd like to welcome back Lou on video as well. Finally you got your video together, Lou. So
hardware magic usually does it.
Yeah. So anyway, moving on. Let's move on now to Einstein of the Week, our regular look at the insanities that people put forward on the internet. Only got one this week, as I said, because my internet connection only came back this afternoon after 2 days. I'd forgotten what it was like to live without internet. It's been quite a crushing experience one way or another. But anyway, let me just tee this one up for you. I've got a question for Lou about this, actually. So let's just set this up. 1 second.
Yes, I am being set up here. Let's see that question.
Okay, so I hope you can see that. Lou, are you familiar with a lady called Candace Owens?
I don't believe so.
Ah, right. Well, Candace Owens is a political commentator, analyst, and activist. She's extremely right-wing, full of conspiracy theories, carrying on tonight's theme. And she's been thrown off at least 2 podcasts for her anti-Semitic views. And she's just generally not the sort of person I would invite round to meet my mum. Let's put it that way. So she has got the dubious honor of being Einstein of the Week for saying the following. Candace Owens says that space is completely fake and that humans have never been to space, and that NASA was invented to promote the Antichrist belief in science over faith. You must come to terms with the fact that NASA and space missions have always been this fake and gay, and you need to learn the history of NASA and the Apollo program, which were occult and satanic.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, I do. I have a comment. It does not always work, but I think it's worth a try. A few years of psychotherapy might help.
Yes, indeed.
Well, this because Andy, we spoke about this before about Candace Owens. She started off quite sensible in a way,
tame, yes.
But then she, like I said, she started delving more and more into these conspiracy theories. And now it seems that she's really fallen for them, and it's she seems, as you said, Lou, she seems to have lost the plot.
We send people into space now that have no qualifications whatsoever, except, well, perhaps they're rich. Send her up.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
If it comes back, that's great. If not, well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talking about that, about sending women into space, have you seen all the backlash that's happened as regards the ladies who went into just on the joyride, the Bezos one, about all the backlash? That's even they're even saying that was faked. And things like, but they've had quite a lot of a backlash, and it's something that it was very strange. I don't know whether it was because it was all women, and it did make national news and things like that. what's newses? National news networks. And it became sort of like more in the public forum. But they have really been hammered. I mean, I agree. I personally, I don't think they're fully qualified astronauts. As far as I'm concerned, they're space tourists.
Mm.
But they've really come under some real stick and all that. I mean, Katy Perry. I mean, well, she was just totally. Some of the things she was saying were just totally off the wall. There was no coherence to some of the things she said, anyway. But yeah, there's
To
sorry.
be fair, Daz, a lot of the backlash, or at least some of it, was misogyny because they were women. I mean,
That's what I was. What is your opinion on whether this is what it is, or because we never had any of this with all the other the ladies that have been up, or William Shatner and all that. It does seem to be very strange that how all of a sudden it. But to go, I mean, there were a couple of things that really they did, which didn't help them in the fact that it being called fake. Was that Jeff Bezos, after it landed, he was walking around the actual capsule when it landed, and then he fell down a great big hole and fell flat on his
I
face.
didn't say that.
Yeah, and then lo and behold, they were stood there talking, and Jeff Bezos was stood there with a special tool in his hand, which was to open the door from the outside, and the ladies opened it on the inside, and they were told to shut it.
Yeah.
Quick, shut it quick. You know, you shouldn't be opening the door. And then he sort of like play acted. He went up to put this tool on. And he was just fitting it in, and they opened the door again straight away.
Yeah.
So I mean, that didn't help them at all. But it
No.
oh, yeah, it's quite funny. But there you
That
go.
great big hole he fell into, was that the one he dug himself for not delivering the BE4 engines on time?
Possibly. Well, I would not like to speculate on that, but yeah,
Anyway,
he was wandering around, wasn't watching where he was going, and there was this great big hole. He went flat on his face. So that's why when you see him opening the door, he's got dirt and that all over his jeans.
I saw that. I didn't realise where that had come from. I saw the
Yeah.
dirt on his jeans. I thought that's not very professional, Jeff. Going out in dirty trousers.
Yeah, look where you're walking. That was.
I'd just like to say one comment about what Candace Owens said, suggesting that NASA astronauts were gay, that NASA was gay. Can you imagine saying to any of the Mercury 7 that they were gay, those big strapping prime examples of manhood, that they were gay? Can you imagine what they'd have said?
Wow,
Unbelievable. But anyway, any of the astronauts.
Well, that's what going back to the deniers. That's what Buzz Aldrin did, doesn't it? Somebody approached him and told him that it was all fake and he didn't go and all that. So his reaction was just to thump him.
Yeah. It may be the best.
Don't mess with Buzz. Buzz Lightyear.
Yeah. Not that we're suggesting you thump any of the moon
No.
Perhaps a good shaking.
No violence. No violence.
Might get some brain cells working again.
Yeah. No, I think he just had enough of all this stuff, and the bloke come out and
anyway,
on the wrong day.
Yeah. That's what he said. Actually, he just got me at the wrong time. So that he did actually apologise for thumping him. I'm not sure. I can't remember the guy's name. He's a French guy. But I think he pretty much gave up hounding Buzz Aldrin after that. So good. Anyway, we're going to start drawing things to a close for this evening. Sorry there's no Constellation of the Week this week. That will be reappearing next week. But as it's been Easter and all sorts of things, haven't had a chance to do a Constellation of the Week, but that will make a reappearance next week. Don't forget that next week is our moon quiz, where you can pitch your wits against us and the rest of the viewers with your knowledge of the moon, which we're sure is excellent universally. And also, as I said, to look forward to in September, we're going to be doing Mars Month in September. As far as Moon Month is concerned, next week will be the last live stream during Moon Month, but I will be posting lots of videos on the channel over the next week. We've got a lot of stuff. We've got all the Apollo missions to cover yet, and we've got some other stuff as well. What the Russians were doing in terms of going to the moon, and some other things. So we hope you enjoy the videos on the channel. And if you do, let us know. Drop us a line at info@SpaceOddities.
If there's anything else you want us to look into, then please let us know. Yeah, we'll
always
see what we
open
can
to
do for
your
you.
ideas. Always open to your ideas from what we can cover on the show. So don't be backwards in coming forwards, as they say. All right, then. So thank you for being here. And from all of us on Space Oddities, we hope you have a fantastic week. Keep looking up. Hope your weather is good for getting out there and doing some observing and or photography. So we wish you a fantastic week. And thanks for being here. Thank you for your kind donations. And we will see you next week on Space Oddities at the same time, 8 p.m. UK, here on the Space Oddities channel. So from all of us at Space Oddities, we would like to wish you a very good evening. Take care. Bye.
Keep looking up.